Tonight on Upfront, we are putting the spotlight on the legislature in Ghana's republic. Since the Fourth Republic in 1992, today there was fanfare in Parliament. They were celebrating 30 years of their existence. But the question remains, has it been a white elephant? Has it still been a rubber stamp? And has it lived up to expectation? Your verdict, plus those that I'll be assembling in studio, would make this show complete. After this break. Welcome back. This is Upfront. My name is Raymond Acquah. Tonight, the very wonderful ceremony in Parliament is the basis for this show. Parliament today celebrated 30 years of their existence. They actually did speeches and told the people of this republic how they are contributing to the development of the country. But we will have our own assessment of that institution. We will be joined very soon by the first Deputy Speaker of the current Parliament, a man who previously sat in that Parliament. He chaired several committees, including the Constitutional, and he was ranking on that committee too along the line, and several committees in Parliament. Also a minister who doubled as a parliamentarian. Because he's a lawyer, he's equally versed with the matters of the Constitution when it comes to the role of the Parliament. The Honorable Inisa Fuseni, former MP for Tamale Central, is actually my guest in studio here. Honorable, you are welcome.
Thank you, Ray.
You are still taking notes, but are you now assessing the Parliament? Or you are actually...
It's a continuous assessment program.
All right. So let me also introduce you to... You know, in 1992, right, some people had the responsibility of writing our Constitution for us. Those who determined that our Parliament should be the way it is. He's one of them. The Honorable David Apasra, he was also in the current Parliament. When he built the Parliament in 1992, he became a beneficiary of it. So went into that Parliament in 2000. And from 2000 to 2009, he was in Parliament. Honorable, you're welcome to...
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And for a very long... Okay, of course, you're still the chairman of PNC, right?
I'm the leader of PNC.
You're the leader... Don't say chairman in socialist parties.
Well, we have a chairman and we have a leader.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So as the leader of the PNC,
Yes.
the People's National Convention, now, let me now bring into the conversation the first Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, the Right Honorable Joe Osei-Usu. They call him Joe Wise because of a certain Commonwealth heritage. You're welcome, sir, to Upfront.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to start on the very direct question. This Parliament that we have today, has it lived up to its expectation? Is it still fit for purpose? Does it deliver the goals that it was in 1992 estimated to deliver?
Well, thank you very much. First is Parliament is fit for purpose. So it's designed, first and foremost, to make law, legislative role, and second, to oversee the activities of the executive, third, to represent the constituent. So yes, it is fit for purpose, it is performing these functions. How effectively we are performing it, though, is left to the populace to judge. Sometimes we judge ourselves. We get into trouble with other people who think differently. But I think that our role is to perform this function, and the public will judge us whether we are in fact performing it to the best of our ability, or in their view, there's something missing which they can suggest to us to add or subtract.
Now, of course, this question is very direct. The third function that you actually enumerated was to do with representation. Do you think that you as members of Parliament, be it in leadership or the backbenchers, you truly represent the constituents that you have actually been given the mandate to represent in the House? For example, how many times, for example, do you engage the people in your constituency, write down their views on the most important issues in Parliament, and make a representation of same on the floor in whichever mode you find it to be?
But you can attest to that or verify that from the number of questions members of parliament file, bringing out challenges, developmental challenges, social challenges that are happening in their respective constituencies. They are numerous. And I'm sure members of parliament do not dream up these themselves. These are the results of interactions with their constituents. When they visit their constituency, they do the round, and then they pick the things which require the attention of the executive. They file questions, and ministers come to provide answers. Sometimes they provide immediate solutions. Sometimes the solutions are deferred. But every day that Parliament sits, there's a question from 2 or more members of Parliament. We call them constituency specific, which are relate to matters coming directly from their constituency. So yes, members do represent their constituents very well.
Perhaps on major issues, is your vote and that of your colleagues, do they represent the views of the people in the constituencies? How do you get these views collated in the first place? And I'm drilling down because some of the issues have been quite topical recently. So if you take, for example, the censure vote on the finance minister, that the majority walked out finally, was the decision to walk out a decision springing from consultation with the people in your constituency and the rest of the constituencies of your fellow majority MPs?
I'm not aware of any democracy in which, on any specific issue, a representative or an MP goes back to do a census or to gather views. The views would be divided. But the real essence of representation in Parliament is on national issues. Because you are elected on a specific platform, a party's platform, to represent the philosophy of the party which you sold to the constituents, which they accepted and elected you to represent them. Those are matters in which your own experiences, your own integrity are to guide you. And the laws, rules, and the philosophy of your party are to guide you in coming to a conclusion. I'm not aware that anywhere in the world, on any matter, you go around your constituency. When you come to the Acquah constituency, for example, it is made up of 116 towns and villages. How would I go to each one of them, assemble all of them and say, should I vote yes or no? It is not the practice in democracy.
And that's interesting because I isolated major issues because one would think that they will require a more representative view. Now, because your colleagues, MPs, told us that they went on break, spoke to their constituents, and a chunk of them actually said they should ask for the head of the finance minister, that he should be sacked. That view was a certain representative view, they told us, from the constituents that they represent in this case. How did they come by that particular determination?
Evidence of that. I would love to see the evidence of where they held the meeting and how many people were at the meeting and what their respective positions and how they aggregated the various majorities that they come by. These are speculations. But I tell you, I represent the people of the Acquah. On any matter, they trust that my judgment will solve their purpose. If for any reason they have reason to mistrust my judgment or my comments, they'll point it out to me. But most of the time, accept the position that I take. That is why, even on a non-major issue, I interact with them during vacation. I interact frequently. Matters that are important to them, that they don't have every information, I'll provide the information. If the feedback is that, go and do this, and it cuts across, I come back and in all debates, I represent that view. But when there's a vote, I don't go back and say, should I vote left or right? No.
Now, I'm asking this because when the CDD in 2005 did a survey, it says Ghanaians expect their views to form the basis of programs initiated by their elected representatives. And they broke it down into some details of what they expect of MPs. In fact, they expect more visits by their MPs to get their views on important issues too. And this is nearly 6 out of every 10 Ghanaian giving that view. This was as far back in 2005. I'm forwarding that conversation to a more recent one. When they were asked about the current state of the parliament, and this is a 2020 Afrobarometer survey, the question on has hung parliament affected MP effectiveness? Even though 46% said largely, somewhat or much more, watch this, 19 plus 33%, more than 50% were of the opinion that it made no difference at all, and actually also said it was somewhat much less. So the constituents, perhaps represented in this survey, if you believe the survey of our Afrobarometer, believe that even in a hung parliament status, you are less effective. Your response?
You see, I read some of the so-called surveys reports, and sometimes I wonder whether they actually do the surveys in the constituencies in which I have been an MP for the past 14 years. When I go into the constituency, when I go into the communities, the thing they talk with me about have nothing to do with some of the things that I read about. But of course, if you stop any people on the road and ask them questions, they'll provide you answers. But when you go and ask the people what matters to them, you'll be amazed about the things they talk about. Some of these survey reports, I often have my own views, totally different from the things that matter to my constituents versus the things that they ask questions about. The things that sometimes they purport to have asked questions about, if you went to my constituency, 90% of the people will not show any interest in that, I'm telling you.
It's interesting. I get your point. I'm sure that because it's a survey and Afrobarometer has a reputation of actually being quite representative, one of the most trusted on the continent, and for the years it has done this, it has actually gained that reputation. The very last question I'm asking you is, what you consider to be the biggest challenge of this parliament and how that can be fixed? Because I'm coming in the studio and I want your comment to start their conversation in the studio.
Well, if you ask me, the biggest challenge that I see today representing our parliament, confronting our parliament, is lack of decorum. The kind of parliament I joined, the quality of people that were in the house, the kind of decorum, even in disagreement, is practically missing in this 8th parliament. And today, Mr. Speaker, interestingly made the same observation. Probably too many young people are now in parliament. I met Dr. Prempe recently, and I told him that nobody has a gatekeeping system. The parties are not keeping gate. Anybody who is observed to be popular is admitted to the party's ticket, and some of them end up in parliament. I think that by and large, decorum, decency, and the nobility that should attend the House, the work of the House of Parliament, is gradually fading. And to me, that is the biggest challenge. Otherwise, it is as usual. We agree, we disagree, we negotiate on things, bring changes based on negotiations which the disagreements have brought out so that we achieve a common purpose. Of late, it's difficult to negotiate anything. It's difficult. I wonder what is happening. Sometimes I recall that when the parliament was almost equal, a radio station called me and I said, it does not make any difference because from my experience in the 3 previous parliaments, Parliament is very good at negotiating consensus. This Parliament, it has been extremely difficult to negotiate consensus. And to me, it is largely because I think that the lack of gatekeeping system is allowing too many people who otherwise should be a more decorum into the House.
You have a problem with the quality of the human resource in Parliament?
Those are not my words. I said people should be more decorum.
Oh, okay. Well, frankly, I guess we can leave it here. I'm sure in the future I can have a more detailed conversation about this 8th Parliament and the ones after that. But many thanks to you, First Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. I sure should bring in my guest in studio, and I did tell you that the former Tamale Central Member of Parliament is here.
Yes.
And he has recently been backing the decision to change the leadership of the NDC side. There is a complaint among some people who believe that the Parliament is now being macro-managed by 8 political parties. First, the NPP was able to get their MPs not to participate in the censure vote, regardless of what the people in the various constituencies that who elected them actually think. They got them not to participate in the censure vote. Secondly, the NDC was able to make changes in the leadership and also tell them that they should not approve any of the ministerial nominees that has been recently made. Is that truly a representative democracy?
Thank you, Raymond, and happy to see my brother, former colleague, now leader of the PNC, David Afasara. Now, you have to look at the construct that we have put in place for the purposes of promoting and consolidating democracy in this country. You can enter through parliament, you can enter into parliament through a political party, or you stand as an independent member of parliament. An independent member, you are voted into parliament. Even when you stand as an independent member, you get into parliament, you must elect, because parliament does business through an arrangement that recognizes the majority and the minority. And so you must associate with one of them. So that's the configuration of parliament. So you have to enter and support loyalty and adherence to party's ideology. It's not a bad idea at all. If it were, then probably Article 97(1)(g) will not be in our Constitution. Because in Article 97(1)(g), if a member of the PNC is in Parliament and decides to show disrespect to the party, the decisions of the party, he can be evicted from the party. Not so. He can be sacked from the party. Article 97(1)(g) says when such a person is sacked from the party, he loses his seat from Parliament. I don't know whether you read that provision.
I get your point. Not progressive at all to me.
No. So you see, so that tells you,
that's why the majority.
But that tells you the importance of political parties in this arrangement.
It only tells me that
look,
Kasara and Co. were more interested in fostering the development of political parties and their foothold over members of parliament.
What I'm saying, that we have a constitutional arrangement we have to work with. And that constitutional arrangement, in fact, if you take that argument further, you will say that when a person is elected into parliament, actually, his party, the party on whose ticket he enters parliament, has a stranglehold on him than the people who elected him into parliament.
Is that is that progressive?
Well, I'm just saying that that's the Constitution.
I agree with that, but is that constitutionalism?
That's not constitutionalism.
Okay.
That's not constitutionalism. Okay. I mean, and when we come to constitutionalism, I will show clearly that why we are where we are is because the institutions that are supposed, and Parliament is one such institution, that are supposed to guarantee constitutionalism and ensure that we are put on the sustainable path of development and prosperity, are weak and corrupt.
You believe weak and corrupt?
Weak and corrupt. And it's not only Parliament. I mean, many institutions. I mean, I always give one clear example. How come that as we speak, the governor of the Bank of Ghana is not hauled before Parliament to explain why he took a conscious and deliberate decision to violate his Enabling Act?
Explain.
Why? The Bank of Ghana Act, in Section 30, says you can lend to government more than 5% of the previous year's GDP.
Was that not suspended?
No, the Bank of Ghana Act can never be suspended.
Not a COVID period one.
No, the Bank of Ghana Act.
About fiscal responsibility.
I'm not talking about fiscal. Fiscal Responsibility Act is not it's not the concern of the Bank of Ghana. It's not.
Yeah.
the Bank of Ghana Act says that don't lend. What is Parliament's oversight responsibility about? The Democratic Institute, the National Democratic Institute says that, look, and it stretches back to the Athenian days, that when Parliament makes laws, Parliament must be interested in how the laws are carried out. So you have oversight. I make a law. We sit down and pass a law. The Bank of Ghana Act says that these are the rules and regulations to regulate the conduct of the bank and how you manage the affairs of the bank. And provide there that you cannot lend more than 5% of the previous year's GDP to government. Why do you think we put it there? Because we know the inflationary trends. That if the Bank of Ghana is allowed, is given an unfettered power, a limitless power to borrow to government or to lend to government, it might cause a lot of inflation and drive inflationary trends, which will affect the workers and people of the country and diminish their welfare. We know that. And that's why we put it there. Now, why the Bank of Ghana's chief executive officer will do that, I don't know.
But
I'm saying
that has been explained. Forgive me.
It cannot be explained that way. Raymond, then let's limit it to the Bank of Ghana.
I will not come to bank, but I need to put out this particular fact. In fact, they explained it this way. The government needed to finance, and I'm reading from their statement they issued in reaction to what was said earlier. The government needed to finance critical expenditures for which Bank of Ghana needed to provide the necessary financing to avert a disorderly default of both servicing for domestic and external debt, including financing critical imports to keep the economy on a stable path. In fact, while the IMF team, who assessed the situation of the economy, noted that the outcome was suboptimal, it agreed that this temporary arrangement was needed as part of a comprehensive solution to address Ghana's economic policies and programs supported by the IMF. So the indication in the media that the IMF came and uncovered the extent of overdraft is wholly inaccurate. In fact, it proceeds to say it must be recognized that the ongoing debt operations are part of the corrective measures designed to address the financing problem. And said lastly, in 2020, the Parliament of Ghana suspended the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Fiscal
Responsibility Act has nothing to do with the Bank of Ghana. They shouldn't even bring it in. In view
of the crisis precipitated by COVID.
They shouldn't bring it in. But
Parliament has not reinstated the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Raymond, all that I'm saying has nothing to do with what they have said.
Oh, but that's what they responded to.
It's much ado about nothing. It's useless. It's a useless response. Now, if Parliament passes a law and says that you can't lend to government more than 5% of the previous year's earnings, GDP, then you want, the country is in a critical state, dire state, that you want to help the country out of the situation. What do?
Go to Parliament.
And amend the law. You can't act with impunity. Impunity is what has gotten us to where we are. That people can sit in their offices and explain away the remits and implications of the law. Now, and that we as a malleable people are even prepared to accept that. To say, okay, we're in difficulty, and they did that. And so, don't you see what he has done? He simply have treated the law that establishes his bank, the law under which he was appointed, with contempt. You don't say it. And you want a strong democracy in your country?
Connected to Parliament.
I'm talking about weak institutions. I'm talking about why Parliament. So Parliament has got oversight over the Bank of Ghana. Parliament has oversight over the Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
Parliament passed the law to establish that bank. So if the Bank of Ghana is misbehaving, if the governor of the Bank of Ghana is misbehaving, who calls him to order? Who calls him to order? It's Parliament, because they should be interested in ensuring the fidelity of the law. But why are they not able to do that? It's the partisan arrangement, the excessive petty partisanship in this country that is killing all the institutions.
But the First Deputy is pretty clear that they are performing their roles.
Well, I don't think that he's read the Constitution Review Committee's report. which says, and I quote, Parliament has in practice not developed into that autonomous, independent, and vital institution capable of asserting its authority and discharging its constitutional mandate. And it's true.
It's their view, he might disagree.
It's true. I mean, we are also
of course, you've been in Parliament.
We were also in Parliament.
Okay.
We were also in Parliament. We know what happens. So first of all, look at Article 78 and its impact on Parliament. Mm-hmm. So you come to Parliament. David Abasara came to Parliament under PNC. To be able to get him to work with the MPP, he was made office. Mm. There were negotiations. David Abasara came into Parliament as an opposition member. Mm-hmm. Opposition to the NDC and opposition to the MPP. He didn't believe, because if he had believed in the ideology, he would have joined them to contest on their seat, on their ticket. But immediately he was taken away and put into the executive in MPP, he could no longer perform his oversight responsibilities. He was not part. And I see it everywhere. Sometimes a chairman of a committee is seen defending a policy of government. A chairman of a committee of Parliament that has oversight responsibilities over certain ministries and departments is seen defending the activities of that department, when that department even contravenes the law. I mean, this is the situation in which, and this is why the CRC came to that conclusion. And it's not only CRC. I mean, go and read. I mean, you might be interested in reading what Rashid Dramani wrote about Parliament. You might be interested in reading about what Justice Trump wrote about Parliament. And many more. There have been a lot of studies.
Even prior to becoming Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael
Acquah wrote about Parliament. Even Parliament itself, when you go back to a moment's time in Parliament, what Parliament did a self-assessment of its own structures, committees, activities, and came to a conclusion. You remember the statement of Bagban. You remember, the current speaker?
Yeah.
So yes, and this is all, culmination, if you want, or a manifestation of a constitution that is failing to deliver on prosperity and development, that has created institutions that sometimes do not look at the welfare of the people of this country, but are beholden to the executive arm of government. Creates an Article 58 that simply says that the president is government and government is the president. Executive authority is vested in the president, and executive authority has been defined as the power with which the president acts.
I'm happy Mr. Pasra is here. Leader, how come the Constitution created this kind of parliament? What was your aim in mind? What did you hope to achieve with such a parliament? And did you think it has delivered the goals, if you had positive ones, up to this point?
Thank you, my good brother here. It's nice meeting you. I believe that Parliament, as we envisaged from the inception, were envisaging a Parliament that is coming to represent not only the people, but also their political parties.
That's what you envisaged?
That is what we envisaged.
Why?
Yes, because we had agreed that we are going to have a multi-party democracy.
Okay.
And so when you have a multi-party democracy, the party itself has its own philosophy. The party itself has its own direction. And the party believes in a particular way of governance. And so if you are in Parliament, you are not just only representing the people, you are also representing the views of your party, your political ideology of the party. And so if Parliament, we think that the Parliament should just all of a sudden be totally representing their people, it will be difficult.
Really?
Yes. Because if you are representing only the views of your people, then maybe you might be in a state where you have either a non-partisan parliament or a one-party state. If you are in a one-party state, then you have no problem with looking at what your party wants. Because if you don't listen to your party can really influence your position in parliament.
Okay.
Yes, if at a stage the party is thinking that you are trying to bring it down, what they will do is to call you to order. And if you don't agree, then you have transgressed. You have transgressed against the party regulation. And they can move, and when they get you out of the party, you have to go back and contest, either on another party's ticket or on your own ticket.
Really?
Yes. And
I'm asking you this question because it's important. I'll actually explain.
Yeah.
If there's a conflict between the interests that your constituents have versus what your political party would have, how do you then resolve it?
That's why you see the structure of the party, you have whips, you have leadership. Once the leadership decides, that is going to be the position that the party has taken. And Parliament works, in tandem with the political party's view. They don't just sit over there. They interact with the party leadership.
Are mere robots.
They are not robots.
They basically have to toe a certain line, whether they have a view of their own, whether they have intelligent minds in there that can propose much more better and more evolving. So if the political party's action is not in the interest of the state, for example.
No, you may not say that it's not in the interest of the state. Every political party wants to govern and wants to rule Ghana and wants to bring about the best for Ghanaians.
Really?
Yes, that is the interest of every political party. There's no political party that is thinking about coming and running Ghana down. Nobody likes it. When it does happen, it is an unfortunate situation. But no political party will be thinking about coming to rule Ghana and wanting to have Ghana run down.
Okay.
Everybody wants to come and manage Ghana the way they look at it. And economists in the world, they don't have a particular view of running an economy. That's why we have so many economists writing different approaches to problems of a country. And so if I am coming, maybe with a socialist background, my view is how to propel Ghana along that path. Now, when I do that, and there are problems, and we are not able to succeed, it is an unfortunate situation. It's not that we came in and wanted to run Ghana that way. So, you see, also, the parliamentarian has to see how to take into consideration the constituents' opinion, the party opinion, and also that of the interest of the nation. The interest of the nation is that you must run, government must go on, government must run. If at a stage, especially with our constitution, if you go to a level that government is fettered to an extent that they can't move, what happens is going to be a chaotic situation, because you don't have this system where you can just call snap elections. You will be there for 4 years. So if it does happen that you fetter government because you have enough numbers, say the minority, if the opposition, let me say the opposition had more numbers than the party in power. If they fetter the party to a level that the party cannot run the affairs of the nation, what will happen? The government cannot run. What will happen?
So you favored a majoritarian rule.
Well, that was the only option. It is if you agree that you want to go multi-party democracy, then you have to agree that yes, you will have a party in power. And that party in power must have a majority in parliament to be able to run. Otherwise, it will have a problem. And it has happened that no party has been in power without a majority in parliament. Every party that comes to power has a majority in parliament. And that is how they are able to run.
This question, when you said we had an intention of making sure this and that happens, and the parliament will do this and that, When you look at the parliament 30 years after your Constituent Assembly thought of how it should be running, is it delivering on the goals that you wanted it to deliver?
Yeah, for me, I would say Parliament is doing their best. They are delivering. The Parliament is supposed to have oversight responsibilities. Oversight responsibility doesn't mean that you are going to go there and direct what should be done. You are going to call people to answer for whatever they do. That is the meaning of oversight responsibility. You don't have an executive power. So you can't go and arrest somebody for having done this. But Parliament Committee, Accounts Committee, will go and look at the auditor's report and then call people to account and cite people for, offenses. Now, it is left with the executive to prosecute those people. It is not for you as a parliament to prosecute them. So if the parliament is able to bring out these things, then what else do you want parliament to do? They have done their duty. Okay? If there is an expenditure, like he was saying, lending from Bank of Ghana, that surpasses 5% of GDP. The thing is for only Parliament to bring it out and say you've erred. Now, when Parliament brings it out there and says you erred, there are so many ways maybe they can sanction somebody that you may not know. Because at the committee level, a whole lot of things take place there that the public don't see. What the public see is when a matter comes on the floor of the House, everybody wants to go public opinion to his or her favor, or to the favor of their political party. That's what comes before. But a whole lot of things happen at the background in the committees where people are seriously cautioned, and then there is a lot of consensus building, and that place you don't have this kind of heckling and so on. And that happens. And I think that Parliament so far have done what they are expected to do, given the conditions under which they are operating. Given those conditions, I would think that Parliament has done well.
Inusa would disagree, don't you?
Well, Parliament, okay, I wouldn't disagree. Except that there's yet more to be done. Because you see, when you look at Parliament, first of all, we must all understand that this Parliament is the longest lasting Parliament in the history of this country. The first Parliament, 1960 to 1966.
Yeah.
The second Parliament, 1969 to 1970. The third Parliament, 1979 to 1981.
Yes.
So this is the longest serving Parliament. And it's work in progress. If you look at the first Parliament, it's markedly different from the second Parliament, which is different from the third Parliament. The third Parliament different from the fourth Parliament. No two parliaments under this republic have been the same, both in its composition and its output. No two parliaments.
They believe in
but you can also see incremental development.
Is there?
Is there, incrementally.
Really?
Incrementally, yes, you can see it. Except that the rate of development is rather slow. I mean, Ghanaians, because we have been denied democracy for too long, Ghanaians want to run. And we want to see the dividends of democracy. We want to see the prosperity that democracy promised. We want to see the development that democracy promised. We want to see accountability and transparency that is being promised by democracy. We want to be able to hold public officials accountable. That is being promised by democracy. We want to see that our resources are not expended recklessly. Democracy says that is possible. We want to see it.
Those are the dividends.
Those are the different dividends. Those are what we aren't seeing.
Yeah.
That is why we are all worried and concerned.
So how then do you say it's working when we are not seeing the dividends?
Because, so we come back to where the government says if we hit your leg against a stone and fall, you must go back to where you hit your leg. So we come back to the Constitution and look at the constitutional architecture. Has it lived, it has been able to stabilize this country. The CRC says it was a political constitution. It delivers stability. It created very monarchical, if you want, very powerful presidents. invested a lot of power because we were coming from a position in which the leader did not know challenge. Do we need to continue that? We were coming from a point where the leader was virtually a dictator. Do we need to continue that? We were coming from a place where we suspected that if we didn't pacify that leader, we could have this constitution torpedoed. And you know, I mean, I have since interacted with a lot of people who were in the constitution, I mean the
Constituent Assembly.
Was
that the mentality with which you gave us the constitution?
No, I don't.
Because many have said so. I'm not sure.
I don't
No,
think
I mean,
that was.
It was one of the considerations that look,
Yeah.
we don't want problem. After all, Jerry John Rawlings, even if he intends to run, he's going to run for 2 terms.
Yeah.
And that's why you people resisted. There were suggestions for 7 years. There were suggestions for 5 years tenure, but you resisted and came to 4 years.
Well, I think that, you see, if we're looking at the presidential system, the only one that we could try to look at properly is the American system. And the American system, once you become the president, you have to employ everybody comes under you. And you run your government. If you succeed, you succeed. If you don't succeed, you have failed, you failed. We didn't want a situation where you will bring in people. Then the president.
The American system is not like that too.
Yes, but the American system.
It's not like that
Checks and
too.
balances in that
The system, you can't,
to the extent that they can
you can't even
budget.
You can't even
They can do
deploy
what?
federal.
The hot budget,
Yes.
and cause the state to default, not only default, not be able to pay public sector workers because its budget is not approved.
Yes.
And to the point that for months, I mean, for days, they count days of that happening in the Republic of Ghana.
You can't even deploy federal police law enforcement officers into a state without the permission of the state.
Yes, but that is
These are checks and balances.
Yeah, checks and balances.
Yes.
But in our system here, if, for instance, in America, where they can hold the budget like that, it is not a majority that is holding that arm of legislature. Otherwise, the majority will never fetter its own government. The majority in parliament will never fetter its own government's role or activity.
Is the opposition's majority?
No, but again,
that is where they have that.
Again, I disagree with you.
Okay, please.
The evidence doesn't lend support to what you are saying.
Okay.
In the Third Republic,
Yes.
Liman's budget
Yeah.
was withheld not by the minority, but by the governing party.
No.
The only reason why you introduced Article 78 into the Constitution was to cure that mischief.
No, please. You see, what happened in Liman's time was that Liman's had a majority in parliament. Unfortunately, at that time, the majority, their MPs were not in parliament. And so the minority had a greater number. And that's what happened. It wasn't Liman's MPs who actually went there. They didn't whip their MPs into parliament. They didn't call them. And so they were not enough, the majority
Budget
at a particular
debates.
time.
Budget debates.
Yes.
But how is that possible?
How is that possible? Budget debates.
Yeah, that is possible. That is possible.
What were the
When it
numbers
comes,
in the day?
you were in government.
Yes.
When it comes to that time, they call every one of you to come.
But in Liman's
Every one of you will come. Now, we must appreciate that Liman was a real Democrat, and he didn't bother too much about pushing people to parliament to do the right thing. And I don't think that they suspected that it will happen.
I see.
But what happens is that if you have a government and given the kind of, partisanship that we have in Ghana, if you don't give the president the powers that he would have to be able to govern, you will run into crisis. Because people are coming up to obstruct, not in the interest of the state, but just to fetter the government in its activities, so that next time they will take over.
That's what.
And that is why we didn't want it that way. Even it was suggested that we should have the French system, where you have the president and then the prime minister. Yeah. And we said that is still not good enough, because when it comes to crisis, the president would simply shift the blame on the prime minister and sack him. And then you still have the same problem. Let the president be in charge. When he succeeds, he carries everything. If he doesn't, you blame him for it. So the president, I don't see anything wrong with it. The president can fire a minister at any time. The president can fire whoever is supposed to do whatever, except we made sure that the judiciary is intact. Once you appoint the chief justice, he's insulated, so you can't go there. The commissions, where people have to like judge and so on, you don't go there. Once they are appointed, they are insulated. And that is to help them to play a neutral role. That is it. But when it comes to running a government, the president has to be on top. And that is, I think, is not a problem at all.
There are calls for it to be changed. They say the president is all too powerful. There are calls for the current structure of even appointing more than half of the MPs from Parliament, more than half of your ministers from Parliament, to equally be changed. I mean, even the majority leader today was asking for a capping of a sort on the numbers that can be, actually the parliamentary numbers and everything, inclusive of even ministers that can be appointed. Over the years, people have seen the constitution you people put together as extremely defective and not meeting the current times.
Please, I don't believe that.
Really?
I don't believe that. That the constitution has given you that you should appoint more from parliament, more of your ministers from parliament. That doesn't mean you should have so many ministers. You can decide to appoint 30 ministers. Only that you should have 16 coming from parliament. The constitution is not hindering anything. The constitution has not. You can't certainly put everything in a constitution to govern you. We have our own, also our individual problems. The culture of the people matters in governance. The culture of the people, the attitude of the people. If everybody is struggling to be an MP, and you know why this matter came out. A whole lot of the people who were in the Constituent Assembly had served in the past parliaments. 79. And they came up with this story that the truth about it is that MPs have the burden of doing everything relating to their constituents coming to parliament. The ministers, they sit somewhere, and then the government MPs work with their party flag bearer, and they come to parliament, and they come and sit down there. And they have no time. They don't care about even the constituents.
Okay.
Because they were not in the trenches. They didn't go there to campaign. So once they didn't go there to campaign, they don't appreciate what's happening on the ground. What is happening on the ground. And so it gives the governing party a difficulty. And that difficulty is shifted to the MP. And if, like, he's here, you can ask him.
So your solution was to say...
So the solution was saying that, look, they suggested that the best option is to make sure that if you fight and bring a party to power, then you should be the one who could know how best to handle the constituents. And so you should be the minister. You should be part of the executive. And you can talk to the president. You can do so many things. That was the reason.
Is there any part of this constitution you want amended?
Well, for me, if I had an option, I would have suggested that we go the Prime Minister system, Westminister system. Okay. Where you don't need to have the executive standing there and you standing here. You are all in Parliament there. And every Wednesday or every Thursday or every Saturday or whatever, you can the Prime Minister will come to the floor of the House and answer questions.
For Prime Minister's questions.
For Prime Minister's questions. And that one too, it will help the legislature and the executive work in tandem. And that one, the Prime Minister is able to hear actually what is on the ground. Because our system now is that you have the president there. He is interested in doing the best. But how would information even get to him? How will you get information
of all the presidential staffers, of all the
presidential staffers?
Yes. Can they supply information to him?
What information? They may supply him what he didn't want to supply to him. But if he comes before the House,
Okay.
that is where the accredited representatives of the people can tell him that this is what is happening. And he hears better. That is the only thing I would have talked about. But I don't think that there is anything too bad about the Constitution. The Constitution, we are not able to operate it because of our own culture, the kind of people that...
But how do you build a Constitution?
How do you bring a Constitution that's at variance of your culture?
No.
Final words from you.
It's not at variance. The Constitution is not at variance.
I get your point.
First of all,
I'm going, so I need final words, yes.
First of all, as a constitutional law student,
Yeah.
I know that 70% of what is in the current constitution came from the 1979 constitution.
Yeah.
So I believe that if the Consultative Assembly was looking to any constitution at all, they were looking to the 1979 constitution. Because 70% of it. Now, the other 30% comes from the 1960 constitution and some aspects of the British Bill of Rights and some Nordic countries. Now, for me, the constitution has outlived its usefulness. We have to put a cap on the number of Supreme Court judges any single president can appoint. We have to put a cap on the number of MPs that we can have at any given time. There must be a cap. At the rate at which we are going with this country unitary population and the propensity of presidents to increase the number of representation in parliament, we won't know where to end. There must be a cap. The Electoral Commission must have a tenure of office. Okay, we can't give him unlimited tenure of office. The Electoral Commissioner must be there for a certain period of time. It's very important that those things are clearly addressed. If not, we are running into the ground. We are crashing. We are crashing because the Constitution is not delivering. There's no Constitution. You create institutions, and those institutions cannot hold the government accountable. You create the Council of State, and the Council of State is only an advisory body to the President. And the President appoints a majority of them anyway.
We should have a day. We should have a day to take provision by provision and have this conversation. But, gentlemen, I'm grateful to you for coming in studio. I'm grateful for you for being there to see through that our parliament is 30 years. Well, folks, that's where we end today's edition of Upfront. Many thanks to you for joining us.